Hello and welcome to 2020 Coaching Convos with me, Julie Crabb, with a slightly croaky voice and a slightly nasal sound, but we'll get through it. Yeah, you've joined me in Case by Case, focusing on reflections with guest coaches from cases in the coaching practice. So I say this every time, our conversations here, just as any coaching session, respect confidentiality in relation to our clients. So it really is fundamental to our practice. Nothing of what we say will be attributable in any way to any individual that either the guest or I have worked with. So let's just see what we can learn from the discussion today. Could be something from a single case study, might be a specific type of technique or practice that the coach is working with. Let's just see. So this week, my guest is someone I know from recent study with Pam Rigdon on our ICF credentialing journey together. And her work focuses in on emotional alignment and intentional living. And we'll probably ask her about that more later. She's a coach, she's a writer, and she's described herself, I love this, as someone who's lived in the messy middle. She's very recently given birth to a beautiful baby boy. She's one of the most committed, steadfast, and focused people I know. So welcome, Nadia Adan of Grow with Nadia. How are you doing today?
Thanks so much, Julie. Great. I'm in San Diego, so it is early morning for me,
Yeah.
8:30.
Whoa.
And yeah, but I've been up for a while with the newborn, so all good and happy to be here.
Good stuff. What time did he get you up this morning, Nadia?
Our first wake up was 3, but we did go back to sleep after
Okay, well, that's good. And is it getting easier?
that. He's very good. I can't complain. It was 3 after a 5-hour stretch, so
Okay, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. Okay.
yeah, it's who thought waking up at 3 would be an exciting thing?
But you're waking up to something really beautiful, so that's grand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, lovely. So I realise I need to be at the top of my podcasting game today because it's not the first recording you've done recently, is it? I've,
It's not. It's like you all came at once. What do they say? All the buses arrive at the same time.
yes. So I listened to this recently, and yeah, you were on the right ingredients with Charlie Peckworth, Peckwood.
Packwood, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I thought you presented incredibly eloquently and very informative. Do you want to just let listeners and watchers know exactly what that podcast was about?
Absolutely. So the right ingredients is run by Charlie Packwood. It is focused on recruitment, but we did a session really on finding clarity and aligning your career decisions with your values and how to make intentional choices when you're interviewing or even when you're at a job that maybe you are thinking of moving on from or not feeling completely in the moment. So we discussed a little bit about that, shared how I shared a couple of examples and a couple of exercises that listeners could use when they're going through potential transition or an actual transition. And yeah, it was a really great podcast. I had never, I mean, I guess I had thought about it, but it's amazing how when you're aligned and when you're living intentionally, it really does go across your whole life. So when Charlie originally reached out to me and said he was a recruitment podcast, I was kind of like, well, I don't know how we're going to work together then. But actually, really important to have that clarity and that alignment when you're looking for new jobs or in a current job.
Yes, absolutely. I like that what you said there because it's true that if you are open to opportunities and you say even a tentative yes, some of these things can ripple out. Yeah, amazing. That's great.
Absolutely.
What a lovely way to start. Now, Nadia, I know that you prefer to call yourself a life alignment coach, and you've done quite a range of training types, some of which I really wasn't previously aware, like the human design, the relationship intelligence. But I'm allowed to say this now because we're both coaches. I'm really curious to know how did you arrive at the work? How did you arrive at this? And I saw that you describe it as warm, practical, spiritual, honest. Yeah, how did you arrive at that
Yeah.
place?
So we'll go back to the messy middle
Okay.
that I've lived. I would say actually, maybe going back even to just before the pandemic, which seems like a lifetime ago, but also wasn't that long ago. Um, I came out of a long-term relationship, actually called off an engagement. The pandemic really gave me time to get to know myself. And that's something of the work that I really do. Self-awareness is something that I think is really important, which is where the human design that you just mentioned and the relationship intelligence comes in. But that moment was, although it was obviously a very hard time for everybody, I was very grateful for that pause that the pandemic gave us all. It gave me time to really get to know myself, really work on myself, have those moments of reflection, um, working out both mentally and physically in my little apartment, but I was working out physically as well. Um, and it gave me time to heal without the external pressures of having to meet with people to make sure I'm okay, but also I wasn't missing out on anything because nobody was allowed out. So that moment was, I would say, the instigator of this. I then stayed in my corporate job for another 3 years, but the last year and a half or so, I really wasn't very happy there. I wasn't aligned at all, actually, and my values were not being met. And then I had a moment where I was just sat myself down and just thought, what is it that I want to do? And looking back on my career that I'd had in hospitality and in travel tech, what I had most enjoyed that whole time was supporting my team in growing, supporting my team in being better versions of themselves. And I inadvertently, without really realizing, had become the coach of the team. So my peers would come to me and ask me for advice and just need a chat, just need someone to talk things through. Like I became the sounding board, the coach, the mentor by accident. And I guess I didn't really realize that until I sat down and thought, what is it that I want to do? And looked back on what actually makes me happy and what made me feel good in my career journey. So, with that information, because information is key, I started thinking about what it is that I could do. And I considered going back to school to study psychology, but really wasn't in the time. It didn't feel right for me. And someone spoke to me about coaching. And I wasn't familiar with coaching at all. I'd heard of it kind of in passing. I was in Spain at that time, and coaching is not really developed there so much. So although I heard about it, I didn't really know. And what this person told me is, I think coaching's for you, Nadia, because it's very forward looking, it's very positive. Therapy, while I think therapy is amazing, it can be very heavy because you're diving into the past, certain traumas, etc., etc. Whereas this coaching, as you know, Julie, is forward looking. How can you grow? You have all the resources that you need within you. Just how can we develop that and how can we get that out? And that sounded amazing to me. That really was like, yes, this is it. Then I started looking into coaching courses and became extremely overwhelmed with I think you can resonate with that. Yeah, it's a lot out there, and it's hard to know which is right, which is good. I don't want to say which is bad, but which is aligned to you. So in that overwhelm, I decided to pause on becoming a coach, and instead I looked for things that I found really interesting at that time. So that's where the NLP comes in, the human design, the relationship intelligence. And I just did separate courses of all of these things, which really lit me up. And with that, I designed my program. Um, and as I said, self-awareness is a huge part of that program. So the human design, and correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, I think I did a human design reading for you.
You did indeed.
Yes.
Yes, you did indeed. And very fascinating it was.
Yes, it's amazing. Human design also just appeared it's all about, for me, my human design is all about following external signs. And I had never heard of human design before, never. And then within the space of 2 months, 4 different people mentioned it to me. So I said, okay, I have to follow up on this. I have to find out what human design is about. And yeah, I loved it, did the course. I think it's a really great way to for people to give themselves permission to be themselves and understand why they are a certain way and not try to be something different because they think they should be. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. That's basically my story.
Do you know, I was just sitting here thinking, I could sit and listen to Nadia all day long. There's so much of what you've said that I want to ask questions about, if I may.
Absolutely.
So the first thing you talked about was alignment. And I just want to understand more, and maybe listeners do a little more about what do you mean? What is meant by alignment?
That's a great question. For me, alignment means living intentionally. And what I mean by that is, prior to starting this work and leaving my job and leaving the corporate world, on paper, my life looked as it should. I had a good job. I was being paid well. I had flexibility. I was living in a city that I loved, by myself, renting by myself. So I wasn't sharing with 100 people. Have amazing friends, and life looked as it should. I'd been promoted 3 times in 5 years. I was doing what I'd studied to do, what I'd been working to do. So, I was in that right moment, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. I knew that I was out of alignment. When I woke up in the morning, I wasn't excited to go to work. It was like, okay, we have to do this. Okay, now what's today going to bring? Living for the weekend and those Sunday scaries, feeling burnt out, feeling exhausted, feeling like I was like walking up a giant hill every day and exhausted at the end of the day when I hadn't really done very much because my job wasn't necessarily very demanding physically or mentally. So that feeling was an indication to me that I was out of alignment. Since I left that and I was doing the courses that I've told you about, and now the coaching that we're on together, I wake up excited. For the course, as you know, I was waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to join the sessions. That previously in my other role would have been the worst thing that could possibly have happened to me. Now I'm excited about it. I love it. And that's an indication of being aligned. So I've chosen, and I'm very privileged to be able to do this. I'm very aware of that. But something that makes me excited, you're in alignment with.
Mm. I love the way
It
that you.
doesn't feel like a struggle. Yeah.
Uh-huh. No struggle. And I love the way that you answered that question with a really personal and practical example of, well, this is how it is. Two things then that you said that I hear coaches saying a lot actually when I ask them the question of how they arrived where they are is that it was often seen by others. Others saw the skills or saw the potential or saw an alignment, if you like, between who you are and what you could do. And then I also loved what you said to yourself, that you kind of self-coached yourself by saying, what is that? What is it that you want, Nadia?
Yeah,
That's often
absolutely.
what we're asking our clients, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay. So maybe this is a good time then, Nadia, to think about the case that you're bringing. Could you give us a bit of background and context to it?
Yeah. So keeping in mind confidentiality, as you mentioned before, I think I'm going to focus on 2 techniques that I really love using. One of them being human design, and the other one, the narratives that we tell ourselves. That comes from my NLP training. So maybe I'll start off with the narratives and the
Mm,
language that we use. I guess when you say it out loud, it seems very obvious. But I find it absolutely fascinating that the story, the narrative, the language that we use and the story we tell ourselves becomes our reality. So we are both living this conversation, but we're both going to have very different realities of it. You'll go back and tell your husband something, and I'll go back and tell my husband and my baby that won't understand anything another thing, but we both live the same thing. Um, and just by the language that we choose to use, we're going to represent a different reality from the same experience, which I think is really, really amazing. So with my clients, I take notes in all of our sessions, and then I share the notes back with them. And when I spot something that is potentially a negative spiraling reality, I will challenge them to think of another way to tell that same exact story. So, for example, I can't get over my ex. He's absolutely amazing. This is a bit different, but he's absolutely amazing. We broke up 2 years ago and I can't move on. I did a values exercise with this person on what they look for in another person and kind of the language they were using. And it turned out that this ex that they couldn't get over was not aligned at all with the person that they wanted. And I saw in that moment a light bulb go off in this person's head. What am I doing? This is, I've told myself that this person is X when actually they're not. And that's not what I'm looking for. And they didn't get over them immediately. It was obviously a work in progress. But just that switch was fantastic. And then the language of I can't move on, I can't do this, challenging that person to even say, I'm open to the potential of moving on. You're not saying I've moved on, but you're changing the language that you're telling yourself. So subconsciously, you're going to start looking for opportunities of, oh, okay, maybe I will say yes to go out with my friends instead of, oh no, I'm going to stay home because I'm feeling so sad. That being open to potential instead of I can't starts triggering your brain to look for opportunities instead of barriers. And I think that is incredible.
Mm.
The way that our mind works for one switch in language is just amazing.
Mm. Very true, Nadia. And I heard you talking about narrative and stories in two ways there. So, how you very eloquently described the fact that our experiences are so unique to ourselves and what we, how we absorb information through our senses and the generalizations we make about that is just so different. And it's always a good reminder that that's the case because it presents us with both an exciting opportunity to be interested about the difference, but also a challenge then to go, okay, so what I'm seeing is not what you're seeing. I'm hearing you not what you're hearing. I'm
Yeah,
feeling not what you're feeling, all of
absolutely.
that stuff. And then the second part of it was about what we tell ourselves, which may be not true, maybe a habit, maybe comforting.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
may reminded me of something I did yesterday that I heard myself do, where I laid out a meal for somebody who I know is a good cook, feeling intimidated. And I said, this is meant to be. And then I said, no, it is this. So, yeah,
Good.
what you were talking about in terms of correcting ourselves so that we give ourselves more opportunity to see things
Yeah.
in a different way. So it's not the
Yeah.
car crash I thought the meal was, it is actually a very presentable.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm. So
And
when
it's just that small word that you change that completely, not only your perspective, but I'm sure the person that you served, had you said this is meant to be, they're probably like, oh, I wonder what it is then.
yes,
But saying it is, okay, it is that.
Yes. And so, Nadia, when you hear a client telling their story, what's going through your head? How do you support the person to see it in a different way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I try to do is listen and stay present. What I really aim, I don't cut the person off during the conversation. I think it's really important to let people speak and get it all out. Then what I do is I challenge them on the narrative that they're telling themselves after they've finished speaking. You've got it all. I also don't tell them that I'm going to do that, because if I tell you I'm going to do that before, while you're speaking, you're like, oh no, I should change what I'm going to say. Oh no, I don't want to say that. So it's very natural conversation. Have you speak, have you get it out, so that you're speaking really authentically. Otherwise, you know, you're lying to yourself and you're lying to whoever you're speaking to, or you're not being genuine. And that, if you're not genuine, you're not really going to get the maximum out of what you're trying to achieve. Um, so I do look for genuine conversation, allow them just to speak. After the session, I don't like to call it homework, but I send follow up. So the notes, and then with comments on where I specifically see that challenging that narrative could be helpful. So, for example, I had another client who was really unhappy in her job, um, was convinced that her manager hated her, was convinced that she was not getting the projects that she deserved to get, etc., etc. And I challenged her on, how do you know your manager hates you? What evidence do you have that your manager hates you? She had none, zero. So through conversation, through coaching, and we started with my manager, with changing that narrative, my manager hates me, to I could improve my relationship with my manager. And over a few sessions, she came to the conclusion, through our conversations and through coaching, that she could guide that relationship she had with her manager. So she reached out to her manager, set up meetings, asked for feedback, asked proactively to be on projects that she wanted to be on. And about a year later, she was promoted into the position that she wanted to be. Her relationship with her manager has greatly improved. And it's all from that, my manager hates me, which you have zero evidence on, to I'm in control of this. How can I make this serve me best? So that was a great success story.
Fantastic. I had two things there. A question was going through my mind that I'm sure you would have asked her, which is, what else might that whatever you saw mean? Which
Mm-hmm.
is a wonderful one, isn't it? Because quite often we can get fixated on that my manager
Yeah,
hates me, or they did
absolutely.
this, and so that means, um,
Absolutely.
or because they did that, I know they think this. Um,
And
but
it
also
happens
before,
so often.
doesn't it just, yeah. And also the fact that you mentioned control, that was kind of going through my head as well. I thought, yeah, actually, what can this person do to take charge instead of feeling victim?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. I'm trying to remember the drama triangle now. Do you recall the three bits to it? Rescuer,
Oh,
Tim.
no,
Oh, I
it's
can't
gone out
remember
of
the
my
third
head.
piece. No, I'll have to put a link in the episode description. Yeah, excellent. So two great examples. For people listening, Nadia, what would you recommend that would help them in terms of the stories that they tell and also the beliefs they have that you were talking about that human design can assist with?
I think that the first thing I would say is to allow yourself to be conscious of the language that you're using. It's really hard to change that from one day to the next. You're not suddenly going to be using the most positive language and change completely, because you've been speaking to yourself that way for your whole life. So it's really hard to just say, okay, she's right. Listen to Julie and Nadia. It was amazing. And now I'm just going to speak to myself in a completely different way. That's really unrealistic. And putting that pressure on yourself is likely going to lead to you giving up on that pretty quick. So what I would say is to be conscious of it. So very similar to what you did yesterday, you noticed that you did it. So you said it, but you allowed yourself to notice that. So start by noticing and calling yourself out. The more you notice it, the easier it will be to start changing. So I love writing. So I would probably, write down every time I thought that. I would maybe be conscious of words that I said and just tally them. And at the end of the day or at the end of the week, be like, oh, I've said that 100 times. Next week, I'll try to reduce that to 75. Step by step. We can't jump in to change things. It's not realistic. And although it would be great, putting that extra pressure on yourself is also not helpful. So yeah, really being open to it. If you live with somebody or have a best friend that you speak to a lot, maybe tell them that you're trying to work on that specific thing so they can help call you out as well. Julie, that is a chicken with whatever. It is not meant to be. Had you not called it out, it would have been helpful for somebody else to say it.
Yeah.
Of course, someone close to you and someone that you trust, not just anybody, because that could become annoying as well if your colleague is always like, oh, Nadia, no, you're not supposed to say that. You might not like them at the end of the week.
Good point. Yeah, it's good to have a cheerleader or a champion that you can trust, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Lovely. There's a couple of really good techniques, actually. Thank you, Nadia, that we can easily deploy in a day-to-day practice. Yeah, fantastic.
Something else, sorry to, so just this is linked to it. For the longest time, and I just realized that I moved my desk last week and I don't have it. I had a list of words stuck on my wall. So I choose, I decide, I love, I am, and a couple more. But I had them just stuck in front of me. So I would see them every day. I wasn't necessarily using them every day, but my subconscious was definitely programming them. So that's also really helpful.
And those words,
and I could maybe find that full list and send it to you so you can also add it to the description.
That would be brilliant. Yeah, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just looking for it, but I just moved desks, so.
So Nadia, we're running up to the end of time, believe it or not, but I wanted to make sure that you've got opportunity just to share a little bit about the program Grow with Nadia. What can you tell us about that?
So at the moment, I am actually offering two programs. So one is self-paced, and I designed this when I was about to have a baby because I didn't want to let my clients down or disappear completely. So the self-paced program is 5 weeks. Every week you receive reflective exercises, you receive a visualization exercise, and different ways for you to really get in touch with your values, let go of things that no longer serve you, and potentially start creating some new habits that are helpful for you. And this was designed really to meet you where you are. It's self-paced, so take your time. I'm always available via email, but it's really for you to just sit with you and get to know you, which is, as I mentioned in the beginning, what I did in the pandemic, and it was truly life-changing for me. It's amazing how much you don't know about yourself when you live with yourself all the time. And then I have my one-on-one program, which is a 12-week program. 12 sessions. I shouldn't say 12 weeks actually, because there's 12 sessions, where I coach you one-on-one, but we do a human design reading. We do a relationship intelligence reading, just so you can really, that's how we start. So you have a really clear understanding of, okay, this is me, before we go on to what are your values, what do you need to live intentionally, to live that life that you want instead of the should life that I've now started calling life. um, and we work through things that I've spoken about today. So challenging the narrative that you tell yourself, really listening to you. And I truly believe that we are all aware of what we want and we all are capable of achieving that. Sometimes we just need a helping hand because we do get stuck in that narrative, and we do get stuck in a life that potentially isn't serving us to the best, but it's comfortable. So why change? But you know there's something else, and you know that you're not fulfilled. So really, oh, I should have mentioned this actually. I focus on working with women mainly because I am a woman, and I identify with that. I live a very comfortable life that I should be happy with, but I know I can achieve more. I live that, and I want to inspire others and support others in living their best selves.
Brilliant. Sounds like two really great programs you've got there. Nadia,
Thank you.
sadly, we are going to have to draw to a close, but thank you so
That
much.
flew by.
Didn't it just? Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on 2020 Coaching Convos, case by case. Um, I just want to thank you for the fact that you just exude self-awareness and insight. And I love that. And I'm sitting here wishing that I'd had that when I was what I'm guessing is your age, because I don't know. But yeah, it would have been lovely to have had that then. Yeah, thank you, Nadia Adan, and Grow with Nadia. And thank you to listeners and watchers. If you like what you see and hear, please like and subscribe and share. And tell me what you want to hear more about in 2020 Coaching Convos with me, Julie Crabb.